The Yat Sing Music Club was founded in 1942 by Chinese immigrants in Portland, Oregon.
Yat Sing is two Chinese words. Yat mean Cantonese, and then Sing is the sound, the voice. So Yat Sing is the voice of Cantonese.
The club was started to raise funds for China's defense against Japan during World War II. Over 80 years later, Yat Sing preserves Cantonese opera through ongoing rehearsals and community outreach.
And I sing it, I feel like I am saying a poem out. And then it's something that you really enjoy. It's beautiful.
Yat Sing Music Club is particularly important for the older generation. At most performances, seniors make up both musicians and the audience in the hall.
As people aged, they left the group, and we kind of like pretty much down to the point of the bare minimum.
What I really worry today is it is difficult to continue this tradition. We can hardly find young people to come in and sing. It's hard.
The companionship the club provides for older adults is special and important. It's a similar experience at Ikoi no Kai, a senior meal program in Portland that first opened in 1979. It offers a community space for local Japanese Americans, bringing people together over food and social connection. Lots of older adults also fill the space here.
Because the older you get, you tend to get isolated if you don't make an effort to go out and meet people.
In Oregon, social connection is more important than ever. The latest census data says the state ranks among the highest in the country for residents who report feeling lonely.
These extracurricular activities really add to the quality of the experience of our seniors here.
It was a safe space for people to be unapologetically Japanese and not worry about the white gaze.
Like if I ever woke up super depressed or super feeling isolated or lonely or whatever, all I would have to do is to come here.
From the Gert Boyle studio, I'm Jen Chavez, and this is The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB about the place you call home. Today, the story of Yat Sing Music Club and Ikoi no Kai, two groups in Portland who provide a space for older adults of color. OPB's Winston Szeto is our unofficial senior communities reporter, and he's here to break it all down.
The Yat Sing Club has a pretty fascinating backstory. Like you mentioned earlier, it was started by a group of Chinese immigrants during World War II to help raise money for China's fight against Japan.
This is Winston. His real title at OPB is Digital Producer with OPB's Weekend Edition.
There's still some debate among scholars about where exactly Cantonese opera began, but most agree it took shape between the 16th and 18th centuries as different theatrical styles made their way into southern China's Guangdong province.
Wow.
The fun fact is, it was originally performed in Mandarin. It wasn't until the late 19th and early 20th centuries that performers began singing in Cantonese instead.
Winston says that timing matters because it was also when many Chinese immigrants brought Cantonese opera with them to Chinatowns across North America.
Under the harsh restrictions of the Chinese exclusion era, this art form became a lifeline, something familiar, powerful, and deeply entertaining.
And before and after World War II, top performers from China brought their dazzling costumes to cities like San Francisco. A lot of those outfits even ended up in Portland.
As for the Yat Sing Club itself, it's been around for more than 80 years now, with generations of members coming through. The oldest current member is John Lee. He joined back in the 50s when he was just a teenager.
我哋響人咧跳舞玩嘛，得係愛，好中意
That's John Lee speaking in Taishanese. He said, I listened to musicians playing and learned from them. They saw I was smart and taught me how to play. I can play several instruments.
During practices and performances, John looked completely at home. He clearly loves Cantonese opera, and he seems to really enjoy being around the other club members. I believe it's that mix of passion for the music and a deep sense of community that kept him coming back all these years.
That's so nice.
I also had the chance to talk with Shirley Yi and Richard Kwong, who both joined the Yat Sing Music Club around 2008. Shirley is a retired accountant living in Portland. She grew up in British colonial Hong Kong, where she was trained in Western music, like piano and choir, throughout her teenage years in the 60s. Cantonese opera was always playing in the background, drifting in from neighbors' radios, but she never really paid much attention to it. That changed decades later in Portland, where a friend of her husband's introduced her to the Yat Sing Music Club. And suddenly, something clicked. She found herself drawn into the music, the stories, and the traditions she once overlooked. And Richard's story is a little bit different.
Okay.
Also born and raised in Hong Kong in the 50s, he wasn't trained in music, but he inherited a love for opera, for Cantonese opera from his grandfather. His dad wasn't a fan, though, and sent him off to study in the UK to focus on engineering. Years later, after moving to the US, Richard reconnected with Cantonese opera, and in 2008, he officially joined the Yat Sing Music Club. One of his first performances was a benefit show for the victims of the Sichuan earthquake. And fast forward to August last year when the Oregon Experience crew filmed the club's anniversary show at Portland's Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association. Richard, now the club's chairperson, took the stage in full costume, a red robe embroidered with a golden python, which is a mythological animal that looks like a Chinese dragon. He played Prince Consort Zhao Saihin opposite Vice Chair Cindy Ng, who portrayed Princess Champing in the classic opera The Fragrant Sacrifice.
And the music sounds just so beautiful. I understand the lyrics often focus on stories of heroism in times of conflict. Is that right?
That's right. Fragrant Sacrifice comes from a famous Cantonese opera called The Flower Princess. It tells a heartbreaking love story set in the final days of the Ming Dynasty. On their wedding day, Prince Consort Zhao Saihin and Princess Champing chose to defy the invading Manchu-led Qing dynasty in the most dramatic way possible, by toasting with poisoned wine and ending their lives together. It was a powerful act of love and resistance, all in one.
They're talking about how they fight the invader and all these things, and how to be nice to the family.
That's Richard Kwong again. He's talking about the song you're hearing. UNESCO listed Cantonese opera as an intangible cultural heritage in 2009. But that prestige hasn't made it any easier for Yat Sing Music Club to pass this art form on to the next generation. At most performances, seniors make up both musicians and the audience in the hall.
What I really worry today is it is difficult to continue this tradition. We can hardly find young people to come in and sing. It's hard.
And so while there is a struggle to find younger people, this club and space is very special for older adults. They're there to connect, socialize, and celebrate their culture.
I believe it's more important than ever to document the seniors of the Yat Sing Music Club, capturing not just their love for Cantonese opera, but also the joy they find in connecting with each other and celebrating their heritage. At a time when diversity, equity, and inclusion are being challenged by some people, preserving these cultural spaces feel both urgent and meaningful.
He says it made him sad to learn that the club was struggling to bring in younger members, largely because of language barriers and a disconnect from the art form.
But what broke my heart even more was hearing that over 95% of their traditional costumes, headdresses, and banners collected from China and San Francisco over the years have been lost to fires, floods, and other factors.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's why I feel such a strong sense of purpose in creating this Oregon Experience documentary. This isn't just about preserving history. It's about giving younger generations a way to rediscover it. And maybe, just maybe, this film can help spark interest among young speakers and learners of the Chinese language to carry the torch forward.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, coming up after a break, we'll hear the story of the lunch program Ikoi no Kai and how it's helped foster community for Asian American seniors. Thanks for listening to The Evergreen, our podcast from OPB about the place you call home. If you like what you hear, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll brighten your Monday morning a little bit with something new and exciting to listen to each week. You can also follow OPB on Instagram at OPB Photo, or follow me directly at Jen Chavez OPB. That's Jen with 2 N's. And I'll keep you posted on everything Team Evergreen is up to. And remember, this episode about senior communities of color and all the great OPB reporting and storytelling you hear on this show is made possible by the support of many thousands of OPB members. That's the beauty of public media, my friends. Support our journalism by becoming an OPB sustaining member today at opb.org/pod. And now, back to the show. Ikoi no Kai is a meal program for older adults. In Japanese, it means a place of rest. The meal program has been a gathering place for generations in local Japanese American communities and beyond. It started in 1979, on Valentine's Day.
Back in the 70s, before Ikoi no Kai existed, 2 Japanese American organizations in Portland, namely the Japanese American Ancestral Society and the Japanese American Citizens League, they conducted a community survey. What they found was eye-opening. A lot of older Japanese Americans were looking for a meal program that not only offered nourishing food, but also gave them a chance to socialize in Japanese.
Using that data, the founders were able to secure funding from Multnomah County to launch the program. But in 2008, the county shifted its focus to broader Asian meal programs and stopped supporting ones specifically serving Japanese communities. That could have been the end. But instead, Ikoi no Kai adapted. It became an independent nonprofit, started relying on donations, and leaned even more into serving authentic Japanese meals.
These days, Ikoi no Kai is open every weekday except Wednesday. They serve beautifully plated 3-course Japanese meals, including soup, a main dish, and dessert prepared by chefs who truly know the cuisine.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So since day one, the program has been based in the basement of Epworth United Methodist Church in Portland's Hawthorne neighborhood. That's where I visited for the first time last October, just before I began interviews. I was genuinely struck by how clean and welcoming the space was.
Oh, thank you so much for your help. Here we go. We need, 5?
and even more by how warm and kind the diners were. There are a couple of lovely traditions at Ikoi. One of them is the sing-along session that happens 2 days per week. And another lovely tradition is after every meal, the program's director leads everyone in saying, "Oishikatta desu," which means it was delicious, as a way to thank the chefs and volunteers.
Without further ado, let's give Chef Naomi and our volunteers our words of appreciation. Can we give them an oishikatta desu on 3? 1, 2, 3. Oishikatta desu.
It's a small moment, but it says a lot about the heart of this place.
Yeah, it does. And you know, Winston, I remember passing by this church and seeing their sign for years. And I was so happy when you did this story and I got to learn about what was happening inside. Can you give us a sense of what this place means to people who go there?
Yeah, Jen, I had a chance to chat with a lot of seniors at Ikoi, but I sat down for a longer interviews with 2 of them. One was Michiko Usui Kornhauser, who was 88 when we spoke. Michiko was born and raised in Japan and lived through World War II. She has been living alone in Portland for years now. Her husband passed away and her son moved out of state for work. Instead of moving into a senior living facility, Michiko made a different choice. She comes to Ikoi 4 days a week to enjoy a comforting home-style Japanese lunch and spend time with friends there. One of her favorite parts of the day is singing nostalgic songs in both Japanese and English, like Auld Lang Syne and its Japanese version.
So it's like eating at home, and to begin with. And then people who come around and have meals together got to know each other and just feel comfortable. I'm so lucky that I can sing all these Japanese songs that never expected in Oregon. My goodness.
I also interviewed Frances Polk. She was 85 when we spoke. She grew up right here in Oregon, and like thousands of other Japanese Americans during World War II, she and her family were forced into the Minidoka concentration camp in Idaho. After the war, they returned to Oregon, and Frances would occasionally come to Ikoi with her parents. But it wasn't until she retired from her teaching career about 30 years ago that she became a regular. These days, Frances makes it a point to come 4 days a week. Even though her parents and many of her friends who also went through Minidoka have passed on, she keeps showing up. Since the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, she has built a tight-knit group at her lunch table. And to her, those connections are priceless. She says she just can't imagine missing out on the community and friendship she finds there.
I would be very isolated because the older you get, you tend to get isolated if you don't make an effort to go out and meet people. And so I know I would be very isolated because I would just be living with my son, and my son is not a terribly social person.
It's clear that these meal programs really bring people together. And in Oregon, that social connection is more important than ever. The state ranks among the highest in the country for residents who report feeling lonely, according to the latest census data. Winston looked into this data, specifically how often people from different ethnic groups in Oregon, Washington, and California say they always or usually feel lonely.
In Oregon, Latinos reported the highest levels of loneliness, with more than 18% saying they often feel that way. That's actually higher than the same group in Washington and California. And interestingly, across all 3 states, white people reported similar levels, about 13.5% in Oregon and just slightly lower in the other 2 states. Black people reported about 7% in Oregon, which is noticeably lower than in California, where that number jumps to more than 15%. And when it comes to Asian communities, more than 14% in Oregon said they often feel lonely, which is actually higher than in both Washington and California. So what does this tell us? Well, it's a reminder that loneliness doesn't affect all groups in the same way. And it varies even across states that are geographically close.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Thank you for breaking that down. I know social isolation isn't just an issue for older adults. In your story, you also focus on how the recent Household Pulse survey shows that younger Oregonians, particularly those 18 to 29, report even higher levels of loneliness, with an estimated 26% saying they always or usually feel lonely. I'm curious, did you meet any young people at Ikoi no Kai seeking social connection amongst their communities?
Absolutely. I had a chance to speak with two younger members of Ikoi no Kai, who are Ame Hayashi and her spouse Danny Nevitt. When we talked, Ame was 36. She grew up in New York City, where she spoke Japanese at school and made yearly trips to Japan with her family. These days, she volunteers at Ikoi no Kai translating menus, helping with event calendars, and co-producing YouTube videos that highlight nostalgic Japanese music. Abe told me her first visit to Ikoi no Kai happened during a sing-along session. That moment stuck with her, and it made such an impact on her 67-year-old mother that she kept coming back. For Ame, the meal program offers something rare, a space where Japanese Americans from different generations who are all shaped by unique traumas and histories can fully embrace their cultural identity without having to explain or justify it.
You know, growing up Japanese or Japanese American here, you need, and Asian Americans in general, I think you need to rest from like being tired of, the constant white American gaze.
Now let's talk about Ame's spouse, Danny Nevitt. When we spoke, he was 51. Danny was born and raised in Japan in a mixed-race family, and he moved to Oregon when he was 18 years old. After spending much of his adult life in New York City, he realized something surprising. He had rarely had meaningful interactions with Japanese elders until he settled in Portland. That changed when he got involved with Ikoi no Kai. Danny said the friendships he has built with Japanese American seniors there have completely shifted his perspective on aging and deepened his connection to his cultural roots.
You know, I think people look at elderly people and think, oh, there's an old person. But when you hear their stories, the things that they've done, the things that they still do or what they love doing or the lives that they lived. And it's like, you learn so much.
It's so wonderful hearing about how special these places are for the people you met. Before I let you go, Winston, I want to ask you, what do these stories mean to you? Why did you want to pursue them?
Let me tell you, I'm turning 47 later this year,
okay.
Which means I am less than 20 years away from being considered a senior myself. In our society, there is so much emphasis on youth. Being young is often celebrated in the workplace, in the media, in pretty much every aspect of life. But we rarely stop to think about the needs of older adults, let alone share their stories, right? And when it comes to seniors of color, their voices are even more overlooked. That's why I've made it a priority to connect with senior communities of color here in Portland, to spend time with them, listen closely, and tell their stories. Stories that reflect their passions, their cultures, and the wisdom they carry. Stories that deserve to be heard by our OPB audience.
Yep, that's right. And what do you hope listeners take away from these stories when they hear them?
Yeah, so for those of you who are listening, if you are still with me, I want to invite you to imagine something. What will your life look like when you are a senior? Picture yourself a few decades from now. Maybe your family members have moved away and you are looking for ways to stay connected. In those moments, what helps you feel grounded and connected to others? For many people, it's culture, the familiar comfort of food, music, language, and tradition. That's exactly what stories like Yat Sing Music Club and Ikoi highlight, how culture creates connection, especially later in life. My hope is that after hearing this episode and reading these stories, you will walk away with a deeper appreciation for the unique needs of seniors and a greater awareness of the loneliness they often face, something that can touch all of us across generations.
Well, Winston, thank you for your wonderful work on these stories and for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, Jen, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.
You can learn more about Winston Szeto's stories on the Yat Sing Music Club and Ikoi no Kai at opb.org. We'll also link them in our show notes. Thank you for listening to The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB. Mia Estrada produced this episode, and our technical director is Stephen Cray. Nolene Silva engineered the episode. The OPB podcast team also includes Julie Sabatier, Sage Van Wing, and our new intern, Malia Fass. Winston Szeto did the interviews you heard. Music in this episode comes from the Yat Sing Music Club, Ikoi no Kai's sing-along group, and Audio Network. If you have a question for us, please don't hesitate to reach out. Email us at theevergreen@opb.org. I'm Jen Chavez. Catch you later.